All right, thank you all for coming this morning. Today, this group is going to talk a bit about how we get to IP transport in our facilities, what the challenges are, and there are a lot of interesting questions around this, and so super different places in their experience and their challenges. And so I think we'll start with letting everybody do a quick introduction of where you are, or what do you do, and where you are in this journey. So let's start with you, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Brennan. I'm a technical producer at Meta. So I run one of the service teams for North America. Our journey is kind of in the infancy stages when we look at it. Our traditional build-out has been sort of standalone spaces, but we know that we can't scale continually like we used to, building out standalone systems. So now we're looking at how we're able to use upcoming technology to make our operations more efficient, to be able to be more of a hub and spoke sort of design, to allow us to be able to do more with the technologies out there without having to continually expanding personnel in each individual location.
Well, Dr. Cross.
Who am I again?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on the technology side. I have been, I'm just fascinated in how can things like IP transform our industry and make things that weren't possible before and bring video to more people, because the more people doing video, the better for all of us.
All right, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Little. I'm at SoFi. I'm the head of AV over there, and I'm here to talk about, among these fine gentlemen, the bridge between AV and how we can work with broadcast and some of those teams and corporate network infrastructure, and some of the learnings that we've taken from previous experiences and how we can incorporate into that the SoFi way.
I'm Gary Schneider. I'm with LinkedIn. We started down the IP journey in 2015 with 2022-6 and have rolled 4 of our 5 facilities over to 2110. The vision in the beginning was interoperability between all of our locations. And having just recently learned about IP on COTS hardware, it seemed like if we were building that new, this was something that we should try. And so yeah, today we have 5 facilities, 2 of, if you count at 7, 2 facilities we have which are tied at great distance through dark fiber to actually expand out our media networks to control or to bring more of those offices into the environment. So we've been doing a lot with the 2110 technology.
All right, Unmesh.
Thank you again. Hi there, Unmesh Suryawanshi. I'm from Visa. I'm leading the streaming and security architecture at Visa. The current challenge we are having here is AV broadcast media infrastructure and the traditional IT. So we are having a lot of challenges from the baseband side, from the AV or IP, and even with the NDI. So hopefully with the panel, we are definitely going to cover from baseband to IP, but at the same time, at what cost, and then we can also cover about the cybersecurity point of view.
Excellent. So as you look at Meta today, and you look at how you want to think about combining the resources of your facilities, and what are the main, what's the thing that is most important to you today?
So I think it's a multi-layered of like what is the most important to us. What we want to make sure is the experience for our users that are digesting all our broadcasts are getting the same quality across their different devices and platforms. That kind of leads to, we see 1080p is still kind of the standard that everyone is digesting. So while you continue to see the lift of 4K capture, 8K capture, and a more video asset standpoint, when we're talking about broadcasting, it's not really meeting that standard in many cases. So when we're looking at where the technology is going and what we want to use is how do we bring more of these locations together into a central space so that way we can then broadcast it out to all the different users, and that quality being equitable from a standard sort of hub or broadcast location to a small conference room and having more control between the 2 different types of spaces. So experience for the user, as well as being able to use technology that allows us to be a little bit more controlled between a smaller office to a large broadcast production space.
Is cost of operations a concern?
Cost of operations is always a concern. I don't think that's always been the driving force. I think it's more about how we use new protocols that are out there to not always just do the same thing over and over again. Like, we have a very robust team and operation that has been going for the last 15 years, but we're also asking the question, what we've been doing for the last 15 years, is that what we should be doing for the next 5 to the next 10? So asking that question is the important piece of not just staying status quo, but also seeing what we can do to improve operators and improve using new technology that's coming in.
Excellent. So, Andrew, as you created NDI, and as your previous talk talked about, and the world has changed and networks have evolved, what do you think is the biggest change that has occurred in that cost relationship that has allowed the evolution of these products that you started?
So I think there's probably two things that just stand out to me as being super important. The first is connectivity has become standard amongst everything. So we have devices. I'm going to go back and say there's three things. I think the second one we often forget about. Every device is easily connected to every other device. I think number two, we often overlook the importance of video codecs on this. The fact that we can compress video enough to get it down those connections is truly enabling technology that we often don't realize, which is what has enabled a lot of this. And then
Back to your phone example.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we have limited bandwidth. Cellular is only so good. And the fact that we can put an amazing looking signal down there, we take for granted when we probably shouldn't. And number three is something that I find really interesting, which is the cost of all these devices to a company it has fallen far below the cost of people. And so the technologies we need are essentially, over a period of their lifetime, almost free when compared to the costs of the people needed to run them, which means we need to focus a lot more on what we will see happen is how do we make people more efficient, and allowing them to do more and build better workflows, which is what's going to drive. So it's the combination of those three things that I think are going to shape kind of where we're headed.
Excellent. So, Kevin, within your environment, you have a lot of different kinds of systems that move audio and video, that create it, that display it. As you see this, and we want to democratize the viewership, but also really the production, you guys have done some pretty interesting things in terms of enabling that. What do you think is the most important one?
I think the most important thing is touching on what both Jonathan and Dr. Cross have already touched on, is the robustness of your team and their experience, but then the efficiency and reliability that you have with the tools at your disposal. So while I would love to live in a world that Gary lives in, where he can send those feeds across the world and do it efficiently and reliably, but it's not necessarily what SoFi might need today, or like previous organizations. But some of the functionality, just as a single person operating, or a very lean team, which I was talking with former colleague earlier this morning, the things you can do with like Zoom NDI and how that's grown, and some of the more efficiencies with vMix and the reliability there. So I think starting there and understanding your audience, and then how those tools can work together with you as being a simple organization.
Okay, full disclosure, Gary and I have known each other and worked together literally since the late 80s. So I've gotten to watch a lot more of this than many others. But you had a very interesting journey in that you got to start, I think, on moving some of your infrastructure to IP far before most corporate customers and most broadcasters. And today that technology has changed pretty dramatically. And I'm curious to hear kind of your thinking around, as it relates to your content creators especially, how you are looking at applying these new IP protocols and transports.
Wonderful question. I think top of mind is interconnectivity between all of the facilities. And what are the creators needing as for their tools on the edge in any of those studios? You know, those are things that we have to pay attention to so that it operates on the infrastructure. But the infrastructure is there to support multiple types of workflows, whether it's live or video production, whether it's 1080p or UHD, and the infrastructure has to be built to be able to support all of it. Given, I think, where I feel I've been really fortunate within LinkedIn is having a network team that is open to talking about what our problem statements are and looking for solutions that allow us to have a distributed infrastructure. So we can think about utilization of tools and devices within a region and not have to overbuild in one place, but know that a region can address peak. So, creatives are awesome. They come up with these really wonderful ideas. We have to be prepared. We have to try to think ahead of them and be prepared to be able to support a lot of that. So it just takes collaboration. All these teams have to be working together really closely.
The perfect introduction to Unmesh, who lives the world of the thing that generally all of us either don't understand or want to kill, which is that meeting of network and security and how you enable these things to happen and not make systems that are so complex nobody can figure out how to get anything done. How do you approach that within Visa?
Yeah, so I would say from the security point of view, right? We are living in the world in the baseband right now. In the industry is going into the IP, but maybe the most favorite statement from my side, right? For the baseband, your entire security is nothing but the physical door. But once you move your infrastructure from baseband to the IP world, your IP is nothing but your virtual door, right? And that can be opened by an accident as well. So in Visa, we are still struggling to bring over AV or IP or 2110 experience, just because all of the AV ecosystem and the video ecosystem is not ready for the requirement from the fintech point of view, right? So our message to the industry is like, if you really need a corporate business, if you really need to bring your corporate technology, like a media technology into the corporate, you have to meet the standard. But at the same time, we are also having a challenge from the IT world, right? Because there are a lot of policy that IT system usually push it, which is not good for the media as well. Like for an example, in a typical cybersecurity manner, we talk about packet inspection. If I'm sending you the data through the email, you really don't care, because if you're getting an email in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But if I'm sending the video packet to you, it's a live stream, so every single second matters, right? And from the security point of view, I wanted to add multiple door, but from the AV and video point of view, I wanted to remove the door. So we are still struggling in terms of like bridging the gap between the cybersecurity and the media together. One of the challenges that we have is network segmentation, right? For us, quality is important, but compared to quality, security is most important. We don't care about the quality, or we don't care about the event if security is going to compromise, right? That's number one. And we saw the incident in the past. If the securities come to the pincher, we can literally shut down any device at any time, right? Like, we don't care. That's literally the honest truth, right? So the message is, while we are going with the segmentation, how you're going to protect your media asset and how you're going to protect your corporate network completely and AV network completely. That's the message.
I think this is a really good place to look at, we've done many panels in this organization over the years around IP transport and the challenges of transformation. But one of the things that is particularly interesting, and I think why we wanted to look at quote unquote democratization, is because security is one of the biggest challenges, and it has different levels of priority in different places. For instance, security is always important, but if my primary thing is to be doing the Super Bowl, I'm more worried about the packets getting there at all than I am if somebody's going to get in and steal them. Whereas in a corporate environment, I'm very concerned about my future IP that we're talking about in some engineering all hands. And then if I stop that, my business doesn't stop. But if my business is the content, then you have a whole different problem. And to that end, I think one of the biggest challenges in this democratization conversation is the concept of mixed protocols and what you're going to use where, and where your users are going to show up and use things that they probably didn't tell you about, or you may not want them to. So back to you, Jonathan, that has to be, I would think, especially at a place like Meta, where there's every employee is creative, encouraged to push the boundaries. How are you looking at that as you think about this?
So one of the biggest things is there's a balance between people that are just creating within the company and then what we own as a service when it comes to our productions that we're creating. One of the key pieces that we've always done is have a good relationship with our network security team. Now, in many times that it will butt heads, we'll try to find a different, or we have to abandon certain pieces that we want to explore. But for them to understand what we're trying to do is a key aspect for us to be able to get to an end result. So I would say in Meta, we have a layered approach of how people are creating things within our internal network that are just a standard sort of MetaMate versus things that are created by our production team and what we're able to do there. And those have certain guidelines that we put in place. Now, when it comes to us connecting with, say, AWS systems and things like that, we create specific scopes on what we can actually do there and what we're going to be using within those platforms. And I have counterparts that really dive into what those sort of requirements are, making sure we're both compliant within our internal orgs as well as externally. So Meta doesn't have like a silver bullet for every single user. We have it broken down into how users are creating content, where it's being done, and which teams actually need greater access to produce that. Now that's when I was talking about us sort of doing the hub and spoke, is that's where our production team can have more of that access to be able to do certain things within a narrow scope, and general users can only do certain level of things within the general Meta platforms.
Super interesting, super complicated. You know,
It always is.
It definitely is, and it could make you like baseband, as Unmesh was saying, because it goes from here to there, and it's on the wire, and then you don't worry about it anymore. It's super interesting. So I'm going to skip Dr. Cross and jump down to Gary, because I think as somebody who started in IP very early and with 2110, which is very locked down in terms of the network itself and what you can and can't do on it with other things, I would imagine that at this point in time, you're beginning to see pushes towards other protocols and how you're going to integrate a multi-protocol environment.
Absolutely. So our facilities themselves are 2110. They're hybrid. We have still a lot of SDI hardware, and we have gateways that get things into 2110, and all of the facilities operate that way. Moving between facilities is TRO7, so JPEG XS transport stream. And how we move that across the WAN and the network technology that we're now beginning to implement, one of the big changes for us is, now we're moving towards actually being -7 across our WAN, having truly diverse paths across the WAN so that we can have a red and a blue 2 locations, because we have suffered from network failures that have caused, the control room to yell in intercoms, "We lost you, you're gone." And then
They couldn't hear you anyway because the network was gone and the comms were on the IP anyway.
Unity.
Yes.
And then it's a lot of manual intervention. So, now because we're really thinking that there's value to having all of our facilities tied together to be able to share resources between the facilities, we need to add a real robustness and resiliency to the network to ensure that we don't have issues and problems like that. So we're doing investments.
And what about, I guess I'll call it foreign protocols. I mean, somebody shows up, they've got a Teams room. The Teams room is NDI enabled. How do you get to this broadcast infrastructure to and from that?
Today, there's conversions, but we are moving. We're working with Zoom to do Zoom ISOs and Zoom rooms, and we're leveraging NDI. And in those instances, it's more of our dynamic media facility, MXL type workflows, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. And NDI works wonderful in those instances. So Dante, AS67-30-20, SRT. We have a mix, and we kind of look at all of it as, you know, they each are a wonderful tool, and we apply the right tool to the situation.
Could make you like SDI, where when you plug the thing to the thing, it talk to the thing. You start going across IP networks, and all bets are off.
I don't know. I haven't touched a coax in a while.
So Dr. Cross, I mean, this is one of the places where I've always wanted to ask you this in a public situation. You know, the multi-protocol thing is a huge thing, and because these creative vendors who have people who are smart like you invent things to make them work, and they look at them from a perspective, but then the rest of us have to make these work in all kinds of mixed environments. And I've always wondered how you think about that as a product designer.
I think the way we should think about it is that multiple protocols is a good thing, not a bad thing. And the reason for that is they tend, or they should, always be solving slightly different problems. If you think about the web, nobody says you should get rid of PNG and just go all JPEG. PNG solves one problem and JPEG solves the other. And the thing that was amazing on the web is that by creating a way for you to build web pages that have JPEGs and PNGs in it, enabled innovation in lots of other ways. And I think that has got to be true in video transport, video formats as well. But I think it's hard, right? I mean, I think it's still hard to get them all working together, which means there's clearly still work to do. And, you know, but I think the underlying trends that allow this, the fact that there's really one standard IP, right? We can run all these standards on the same cable, which is in itself amazing. Now we need to work out how to get them all working better together. But the fact that we can even say that, you can't say that about HDMI and SDI, or Dante and analog audio. So we've taken a big step here. We've just got to finish it.
That's a great answer. It's such an interesting challenge, especially because so many of us started early at this. And, you know, it's the thing about an HDMI to SDI, it's a box. Plug it in on one side. The other comes out the other end, you hope. But in the land of IP, that's a chunk of software. And as we all know, that has to run in real time because a 30th of a second is still a 30th of a second. So these are super interesting challenges.
Oh, and I think that, you know, we've silently ignored protocols. Like Teams is protocol, like, you know, Zoom protocol. Yeah. Displaying what's on my laptop. Hey, it's something coming out. Like, how do we work with all these different sources in different ways, solving different problems? And I think it's one of the challenges that's got to be fixed still.
Very much so. All right, well, that tees up Kevin. So now that we put all this in front of you and you're trying to figure out what to do at SoFi with all of these various things, what do you see in terms of the future users of, you know, video products within SoFi? What do you want to achieve in terms of enablement for in this democratized creation world?
You know, listening to this and like touching on that point here in a second, it's interesting because even when starting early at SoFi and understanding the organization and what everybody's already touched on, is we're in the unique position to evangelize a lot of things, and we have to find our allies, whether it's corporate network or security or even executives, which I think Gary has touched on in a previous conversation. These are basically your team to kind of help you evangelize these things, and we're in a very fun, unique position to kind of disseminate all of those ideas and protocols to make their image or creation out to the users. So with the incredible amount of, back to your point, back to the incredible amount of progress that's been made and what's going to happen, is extremely excited about the future that's to come. So the evolution of NDI, I was using it for the first time over at Twitch, where we're touching it, and then how manufacturers kind of followed the fold and like really built into it. Like every camera says that they can do NDI, and you find that box, and that might make sense for your organization. But then you do Dante, and you think about Dante Video, or you talk about, we were just talking about IPMX, and you start to do all that. And my point is, feed through the noise a little bit, understand your organization and what SoFi actually needs, right? In my unique position. So one of our values is being a founder. So at some point, I'm going to have to take all the information that's out there and then give SoFi that actual event experience that they're expecting, the consistency, the reliability, and that will, sorry, Gary, it's not SDI, it's going to be. It will likely be NDI because it's simple, right? You can tie that with Teams, Zoom, and other protocols and make that simple. And I think and learn from a lot of people, even on LinkedIn too, who share their stories in this community here, how we're all just sharing and learning from each other about these simplest workflows and how they're working together. That's what I'm most excited about too.
No, that's excellent. So Unmesh, one of the things that was interesting about this particular panel, we ended up with two people from financial services companies, where the concept of democratizing any technology has got to be somewhat terrifying as an organization. But I'd like to give you basically the same question I gave Kevin, which is, what are as you evolve the infrastructure and you have content creators, very diverse ecosystem of content creators within the Visa world, from marketing to events to comms, how do you see your team's role in being both the referee, but also the innovator?
Yeah, I think from the innovation standpoint, right, like whenever we are designing any media or broadcast space, we talk about innovation, that means we are talking about fancy technology, right? The fancy technology comes with the complex architecture. One of the challenges that we always face from the end user side is they want something self-service, right? So how you're going to create the ecosystem where you are bringing the innovation, maintaining the cybersecurity, but at the same time creating a self-servicing experience for the end user. So our goal is, even like if I'm going to save 5 seconds of end user time, if you are just going to scale that 5 seconds into 40,000 employee Visa for an example, it's a lot, right? So that's the one thing. But also from the architecture standpoint, what we are seeing a challenge is, and again, I'm going to more into the security again, because of the baseband industry is so isolated, we have to invest a lot of money just because we have to just rely completely on the physical space. So you're talking about the cost, you're talking about the resources, right? When you are moving from baseband to the IP, at the same time, you are getting a remote management. You have more control, you have more flexibility. But also whenever you're talking about the IP and more flexibility, that comes with a cost of all of the agents that's running on your endpoint as well. So that's the struggle that right now we are having, and what we are trying to achieve is how we can segment the entire enterprise network and our AV network completely. So when I say like segmentation as an AV, we don't talk to the internet at all, right? And that's why we have to rely on HDMI and SDI workflow, right, for an example. But definitely we wanted to bring everything on an IP base, right? But the moment that we say IP, people are scared, right? Because baseband is smart, but IP is intelligent. So That's the fight that we are having right now.
Well, thank you. I want to just wrap up and thank an awesome panel for what I think are super relevant questions that all of us are chasing every single day. Thank you all for attending. We'll see you around today.